For us, it's building up people to get them into careers, because we're not monetized. Like 100 devs is not monetized. Commit Your Code is not monetized. None of this is monetized. And so it really takes a special individual, not saying that I am, but I'm saying for the average individual, you're not wrong. But
do not sign exclusivity. I've seen so many people get burned by signing exclusivity with a recruiter, which means that only they can help you get the job. What if they suck at doing that? Then you're screwed for a while.
Your other strategy going into interview number 1 should be researching the absolute heck out of the company. You should be on their social media pages. You should be on their company career page. You should be on their company portal. You should even be looking up like ex-employees to find out like why did they leave? Was it a shit show? Was it a bad experience?
I think some people see people be successful in the job hunt, and often quite quickly, like in under 3 months, and they're like, lucky, I don't know how they did it. No, they were prepared. That's how they did it. They didn't go into the interview process like an accident. They prepared the tell me about yourself. They crafted a perfect story.
What's going on, everyone? We are back with another one. It's been a wild week. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Danny Thompson. I'm the director of technology at a company called This.Labs.
And I'm one of your co-hosts, Leon Noel, Manager Director of Engineering for a wonderful nonprofit called Resilient Coders, and community member at 100 Devs.
Pow.
Boom.
It has been a wild few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a wild few weeks. I wanted to take a moment. If you are listening to this episode right now and you have not listened to the previous 2, you are doing yourself a very large disservice, in my opinion. But to be honest, there's also 26 other episodes you should probably as well. But those 2, man, we have not had a moment to reflect on our largest guest episode ever with all of our guest co-hosts. What did you think about that? I have a lot of thoughts.
So the funny thing is they're all folks that we've interacted with, right? Like they've all been in our courses or in the programs that we help run, but they're all also just like badasses all in their own right. And so I could see all of them coming back as individual co-hosts. So to have them all on one episode was chaotic and a lot of fun, but so much value that came like through all their perspectives. And so for me, it was just like, I was trying to like be in the moment, but I was geeking out. I was having a lot of fun because it was like people that I've seen their whole journey. I've seen them go from where they were to where they are now, and all the hard work they put in. And so to be there, I was just like happy, proud, but also just like they're sharing gems right now. And it was really special. It's kind of hard to put into words, but it was just really special because we've been doing this now 25 plus episodes.
Yep.
You Google programming podcasts, we're showing up. You Google coding podcasts, we're showing up. And to now be able to like highlight like so many unique and special individuals is really cool. It's just like I see the future of what the podcast could look like, and I just enjoyed the moment. How about yourself?
I hated it. We're literally giving a platform to our own competition at this point. So I don't know. Oh my God. It was funny because I was talking to someone about that. They're like, oh, you're just like raising your own competition. I was like, I guess so. To be honest, I'm not mad about it. I've often said this. Actually, you can find tweets for years of me saying this, that right now, I'm the quote unquote flavor of the month, I guess, but that time is going to pass. And I would rather it pass to good people in the community continuing to take care of the community. So if we help folks that, we were just talking about this in your Discord, actually, because right before we recorded this, we were in, what do you call it? The huddle, right?
The huddle.
Stand-up? Huddle.
Yeah.
And so in the huddle, we were talking, someone was asking, like, I need a recruiter to help me, to guide me, to dedicate time to me, even though I'm international and I'm probably not going to land a job anytime soon. And I was like, oh, that's not what a recruiter is. Like, why would they ever do that? And it's like you're looking at the core function of what a recruiter is completely incorrectly. And to be honest, especially when we're talking about like employability, It is very hard. And I don't like boasting about myself, but I am. I don't like really tooting my own horn, but I will. And this is one of those times because it is so hard to find people outside of like Leon and myself that will do this at the scale that we do it for as many people as we do. You might find people that mentor once every now and again, here and there, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's exhausting, and it is. We have kind of made it our passion, or really, honestly, it's a hobby. Like the way people game, the way people like do arts and crafts, or build massive Legos, or they build these crazy puzzles, or they do woodworking on the side. For us, it's building up people to get them into careers, because we're not monetized. Like 100 devs is not monetized. Commit your code is not monetized. None of this is monetized, and so it really takes a special individual. Not saying that I am, but I'm saying for the average individual, you're not wrong. But no, for the average individual to want to do that, it's very difficult, because the reality is, and I've seen this firsthand, for some people, they are very appreciative of the opportunities. They want to have really meaningful conversations, et cetera, et cetera. For others, it's almost as if they're in a mindset of people should want to do this. They should want to go out of their way to help me. And for me, I've had these conversations for years at this point. Whenever I get into those, it's very easy to navigate it and make a person see that perspective. But when you're going to someone who isn't prepared for that conversation, it rubs them the wrong way. Now, to address the main point, there's almost no recruiter in the world that is going to be like, I'm going to dedicate years of my life to help you out. It's just not what the core function of the role is. It's a job. The way that they monetize their living, the way they get to pay their light bill, is by having hundreds upon hundreds of conversations a week. And I remember this distinct number. I was talking to a recruiter for a Fortune 500 company. They're an internal recruiter. So it's not even like an external one working for like a third party company trying to get them to go with them, right? It's an internal recruiter. When they have hiring going on, at peak times, they're having roughly around like 400 conversations a week. Of that 400, 10% are probably going to be in the realm of being interview ready, right? Like they're ready to take interviews now. So that's 40 people. Of those 40 people, 2 probably have the potential to actually get in the seat at the end of the interview process. So to get 2 people, they're having 400 conversations, and they're only going to be paid off of those 2 people. Why would they go out of their way to just dedicate hours to help someone get a role if they're not in that position themselves already? There's no reason to do so, especially when we're talking about someone doing something that's part of their living, right? Yeah. It's like going to a developer at whatever Fortune 500 company you could think of and like, hey, come make me a website right now. They're like, yeah, sure. Like I'll freelance for you. Like here's my hourly rate. Yeah. They're not going to come to a complete stranger they have no attachment to, no association with at all and be like, I'm going to dedicate parts of my life to you. Yeah. The most common time I've ever found someone ever dedicating mentorship has been because they've met them, they've grown a relationship with them, they like them, they've seen something in them to where they're like, I'm going to dedicate time. You actually feel like if I pour time into you, it's going to be fruitful. It's going to pay off in the long run. This makes total sense to me. I'm going to do it. How do you get that? It's not by a cold DM, but it can start that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because the person was in the 100 Devs community. And this is also something I was tweeting about earlier too. I think the other day I tweeted about this where it's like,
hopefully you're liking that episode, and we'll get back to the conversation in a second. But first, a word from our sponsors. Financial literacy is important, especially if you are in a position where you are changing careers and income brackets. More income can create larger financial issues if you don't budget correctly. So this episode is sponsored by Lucas Casares, certified financial planner and founder of Level Up Financial Planning, where he specializes in serving early and mid-career tech professionals to help you take your financial confidence to the next level.
Danny and I have helped thousands of people level up in tech, often going from 0 to 6 figures careers and seen all kinds of mistakes. Level Up Financial Planning helps you gain clarity on all your finances. This includes prioritizing, managing employer stock, retirement planning, tax planning and preparation, college planning, and as a special deal for our listeners, you can get a complimentary meeting with Lucas. All you have to do is visit levelupfinancialplanning.com to find out more.
Lucas is awesome. A lot of people already checked it out from the previous episodes. Give it a check. Back to the episode.
our communities are free. Something very special about those communities. And you're not going to find it replicated in many other places. And so sometimes I think people, they come into tech through us and they assume that everyone else is the same, and that we'll give up the time, we'll do the huddles, we'll do those things. And it's just not the case that you'll often see. There are others that do it, but it's definitely rare. And so if you are coming into tech, it's worthwhile to find these communities of folks that want to see you win, that'll put time into you. And that's why we're so thankful that so many people listen to the podcast, and it's an outlet for us to do what we find is like our true passion, which is to help others specifically get jobs. And we're not bashful about it. We're some of the best people in the world at helping you get a job. The numbers, ball don't lie. The numbers are there. And I think that kind of leads us into what we want to talk about today, which is during the huddle, you asked, hey, what should we talk about? And one of the questions was, all right, what does it look like to go through the behavioral rounds, the technical rounds? Like, what does it actually look like to get a job? And I know we were also talking about like recruiting, but like, what is that whole process? What should you be doing to kind of get through those individual stages? And I know we've touched on this a little bit here or there, but I want this to be something somebody can come back to. I mean, like, all right, how do I get prepared for these different stages? What do I need to know? What do I need to prepare for? How am I going to put my best foot forward so that I'm one of the two, right? If a recruiter's talking to 400 people a week, how am I one of the two? Right? You got some balloons because you're one of the two. Congratulations.
There you go.
Right. So how do we make them one of the two? Eddie? Like, what do we need to tell them to get ready to be one of the two?
I think the first thing is identifying what really is the role of the recruiter. And we kind of already said that. So now the idea is use them as the tool that they are. I would be having multiple actually working for me. If a recruiter is listening to this, I'm sorry. But generally speaking, I have multiple at any given time working to get me a role that makes sense. I don't believe that a recruiter is loyal to me in the sense that they're only going to have me as their only candidate during that entire process. And it would be foolish of me to do the exact same thing. I don't believe in all my eggs in one basket. I don't believe in their ability to get me within that conversation just by themselves. So I would like to have multiple of them working the same way, right? Like they're going to get a fat commission if I land a role. They should earn that business. And if they can't, someone else will, right? And it's the same thing for like a junior dev role. If you can't perform, someone else will. And so it's like you have to be in a state where you're now ready to have these serious conversations. The second thing that you need to do before honestly applying or going for it to have these meaningful conversations, truthfully, audit what level you are really at. Because I'm telling you right now, if you only know what an array is, these conversations aren't going to go in your favor. And this is actually one of the things that we struggled with in this last cohort. The last cohort, for the first time ever, for those that don't know, I do a cohort. It is not like Leon's. Leon is teaching you from the basics. For us, our cohort is you have to be past the stage of a beginner, but we put you on teams being guided by professional software developers in the industry to build a project that's actually worth talking about on a very meaningful level. But it showcases that teamwork and that higher level aspect. We have some very rigorous standards. A lot of people end up learning a lot in that 6-week process, which is great. But the real idea is to give you something like an experience and a project to talk about within that interview process. So I would audit that because I'll tell you right now, so many people apply to that cohort. They weren't even ready to contribute to a team project, but they're like, I can't get a job. It's like, you need to really think about that a little bit. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying you need to be a world-class developer, but you need to be past the stage of like knowing absolute basics. So you got to give yourself a fighting chance. But I would say that with the recruiters, often, especially if we're talking about your first job in tech, you're probably not going to have multiple that are advocating for you. But like-minded individuals and roles hang out with like-minded individuals in those roles. Like software developers know software developers. Engineering managers know other engineering managers. Recruiters know other recruiters. So by knowing one, you now have a network that could potentially work. Because think about it. Do you know how many times I've talked to a developer at like a meetup, like, oh, I'm working on this thing, I'm stuck on it, and they'll give advice. They'll help. They'll talk about something. Think about how many times a recruiter's going out to lunch with another recruiter and like, oh, I'm looking for XYZ. They're like, oh, I actually got somebody that can match that. I just met this person the other day. Perfect. I'll connect y'all. When it comes to networking, it doesn't necessarily always have to be that you are the right person for that thing. Sometimes being a connector is a great way to network, and a lot of recruiters will do that. Plus, now they share in the commission.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things that you hinted on that I wanted to add on to. In the beginning, you mentioned that have multiple recruiters working for you, right? When you're entry level, like you were saying, it's not really the case that you have a lot of these like recruiters that are coming to you to then shop you to other companies. It's something a little bit further in your career. But if you do have them coming to you, do not sign exclusivity. I've seen so many people get burned by signing exclusivity with a recruiter, which means that only they can help you get the job. What if they suck at doing that? Then you're screwed for a while. And so please don't sign exclusivity. If you have these folks that are coming to you and you just learned how to do your arrays, there's probably something fishy in the water. Be careful. Then being ready, like you said, there were the days where if you sneezed and said JavaScript, you got a job, right? We were in this game before that time, we were in it during that time, and now we're in the time that's not the case. And so you want to have a bare minimum. I like to say there's a couple of things I like my folks to have: a project that they can meaningfully talk about, where they know the ins and outs, right? Whether that's through a cohort, whether that's something that you build. And then 2, are you ready for the interviews that you're going to go through? Can you get through behavioral interviews? Can you get through technical interviews? And we could talk about how you prepare for those, but at minimum, you should be able to be like, all right, I feel confident going into behaviorals. I feel confident going into technicals. I have projects that I can meaningfully talk about. And then there's some other things that I've always seen to be big wins: freelancing, having people that have actually paid you real money to be an engineer, working on larger projects in a team, whether it's through a cohort or open source projects that you believe in, right? Like give you these extra skills. And so once you have that package, then it's way easier for a recruiter to work with you because they have something that they can market, that they can sell to these orgs that are looking for talent. And so kind of getting through that baseline sets you up for that success. And I see too many people kind of start too early. I don't think it's ever too early to start the networking piece and making sure that you're building connections to get into these opportunities and talking with recruiters. But going into the interview phases without these basic things locked down, it's going to kind of probably set you up for some pain.
Yeah. Next, I would say you need to have a strategy in regards to your hiring process.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of strategies that exist out there. And I'll be honest, this is something that I don't often talk about publicly because somebody's about to steal this and try and make it their own.
Yep.
But my goal has always been, how do I set myself up for once I'm in the conversation, and how do I set myself up before I'm in the conversation? And the way that I do that is the strategy I play around with my resume and my LinkedIn profile. And it's even the way that I reach out in the beginning. So generally speaking, when I'm creating my resume, I'm often thinking about, if they read this section right here, they read this job experience and this and that, what do I want them walking away thinking? A lot of people look at it as like, there's a checklist here, right? Generally speaking, my goal is, what do they actually walk away knowing?
Yeah.
That right there has always been a piece of advice that I hold for calls, mainly because a lot of people don't think about this at all. It's not in their radar. They don't strategize around it or nothing. For me, my whole strategy around the resume and LinkedIn profile is, what questions do I want them developing on me for them to ask? Because if I don't over deliver on information, if I don't oversell myself, they're not hiring a private investigator to be like, Danny applied for this, go find out everything about Danny and his life. No, They got my LinkedIn, they got my resume, that's it. And so if I don't give them enough information, they go down the path of cookie cutter questions that just exist. I've just seen it so many times at this point. Because think about it, oftentimes the first interview, what are they doing? Danny, so I see your resume here, so we're going over this. So I say, you worked at this company, you worked at Jimmy's insurance company down the street, you worked at the bodega down the corner, la da da. They're referencing things that I've already put on there. Now, if I put on there, let's say, using simple examples here, that I was a barista. Everybody can understand what a coffee barista is, that works at a coffee shop, they make the coffee, right? There are certain things that I imagine about that role that already exist, right? They made coffee. Maybe they merchandised a little bit. Maybe they served the drive-through, right? Something along those lines. You don't need to put that as a job description, like or in your experience section of things that you did within the role. They already know that.
Yeah.
But what about the time where you were able to re-merchandise the coffee packaging in the front of the store that led to a 10% increase in sales?
I don't think people just heard you. I really don't think they did, because we've shared this before, and I still see people just putting raw facts that people already know about. I worked in a collaborative team using agile methodology. If I see that one more time, I'm going to scream from the top of the rooftops, right? Like, we know that you did that already. We know that you probably worked in a team. We know that you probably used some normal methodology. We know that you probably used Jira. Like, if you're putting that stuff on the resume, we already know that's what you're doing. And you're not highlighting the wins, the things that somebody sees that they go, wow. Or when they see that thing, they go, oh, I have something. I loved how you phrased that too. I have something I can now ask them about, right? Like, oh, you increased that efficiency by 20% by making sure that the sticks were half the size and not the full size. What made you think to do that, right? Like,
bingo.
You know, like what, like that gives them that fodder to talk and to get curious. If you don't have those things on there, they're going to look at it and go, nah, and let's move on to the next candidate, right? You need to spark that curiosity. The thing that I've always said too is that people don't realize how much of the hiring process is vibes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just straight vibes. And people will recommend, like, a lot of times companies vote on who goes to the next round. It's like, do you recommend that I hire, strongly hire, not hire, or strongly not hire, right? Like, is it a legitimate vote? And you can play the game to where the vote goes in your favor because they're interested in what you have on your resume. They're interested in your experience. They're interested to learn more. If there's nothing that if you just look like every other candidate because you worked with Jira, like that's like, there's nothing they can go off of. And it's probably the biggest mistake I see at the first phase, like the I'm trying to get interview phases. If you're not getting interviews and you're not at least following XYZ format, there's nothing interesting that I could ask you about question wise on your LinkedIn or resume, that's why you're not going to the next rounds. Full stop.
Yep. And the best part about that is because of that action, you're setting yourself up for a better interview, number one. Mm-hmm. And the best part about that too is, if we're being honest, let's say you're a nervous interviewer. A lot of us are. Hell, who likes to be interrogated out of nowhere, right? But if you're a nervous interviewer, what better way to help ease those nerves than to have topics to talk about that you already know? You know you can crush it. You know that you're successful in those topics, and you're guiding the interview there. Why are we so hell-bent on rolling the dice just to see if they end up in a conversation that they want to be in? Yep. Or like not even preparing some of the questions. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how many people that I know that listen to our stuff, that are a part of our Discords, where I've said it for years now, where they're like, you know, there's going to be several questions that they're going to ask in almost every single interview. What is the number one question that's guaranteed to be asked in every single interview? Tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself. And people will say, oh, I'll wing it. Or I've even had people like argue with me like what the answer should be. Here's the reality. If they're asking you the question of tell me about yourself, they are not asking about your cat. They're not asking about your favorite food. They're not even asking about your favorite TV show. What they are asking about is tell me about yourself in relation to this role. Tell me about yourself and how you can absolutely crush this role. It's the layup that they're giving you for free to set you up. But they want to know what makes you that candidate. Now, I've had somebody in the past argue with me saying, oh, well, when I mentioned that I have a cat, we were able to kind of bond over cats. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, when was this? 2021. Yeah, that totally makes sense in 2021. In 2025, there are 1,000 people that are vying for this role. Nobody wants to hear about your cat. Yeah. This is a totally different market.
I loved what you started off today with the 400 conversations down to 40, down to 2. Because if you make it down to those 2, you bet that other person you're going up against prepared all these questions. I think some people see people be successful in the job hunt and often quite quickly, like in under 3 months, and they're like, lucky, I don't know how they did it. No, they were prepared. That's how they did it. They didn't go into the interview process like an accident. They prepared the tell me about yourself. They crafted a perfect story. I give out a bank of questions. We call it the bank in 100 devs. It's like 400 questions that people prepare. You're going up against people that have prepared 400 plus questions, about 30 behavioral, about 300 technical that they have memorized. And when they're in an interview, they're going to go, oh, that's well, glad you asked about it. And just rattle it off like it's the calmest day on Sunday because they put in the time, energy, and effort to be prepared. If you are not putting in the time, the energy, the effort, you are going up against people who are. And maybe peak pandemic hiring, you could sneak through because you had the Ninja Turtle on your shelf and they really like Ninja Turtles. You're not in that market anymore. Like Danny's trying to tell you, it's a different market and you need to be prepared. But the good thing is you can prepare these things. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? Like you can prep the tell me about yourself. You can prep the same behavioral questions that get asked at every single interview. You can prep the technical questions that get asked at every single interview. You can prep talking about the projects that you have because they're going to ask you about them, right? And that's even before we get to technical. That's before we get to data structures, algorithms. Most people never make it to that phase. And you have to realize it's all about risk. Why should I send you to the nerds? Like, why should you leave this behavioral, this phone screen, and go waste my engineer's time? The kid coming out of MIT that interned at Meta, they could be juggling on the interview and still go to the technical round because that recruiter's never getting in trouble. That recruiter's never getting in trouble. The person that did that behavioral screen is never getting in trouble sending the kid from MIT that interned at Meta to the technical round. So how are you de-risking yourself? How are you the candidate that should go and waste the engineer's time because they have to take time out of their day to give you this interview? What about you makes you worth going to that stage? And the earlier you're in your career, the riskier it is to send you to that next stage. So what have you shown us? How have you talked about yourself? How have you talked about your accomplishments so you go to that next round?
Yep. I mean, I've been saying that for years, that often people lose at interview number 1 because they've been so focused on interview number 3. Yep. It's the same thing. And then they're not even thinking about sometimes interview 0, which is the way you conduct yourself at these meetups, at these events. Because if you're getting a referral from somebody, because we've already established multiple times now that the fastest way into interview number 1 is by way of referral and no other way besides that. You can cold apply and get roles 100%. But if you're not auditing the way that you're being perceived at these events, what do you think is happening? Because if they're advocating for you or you want them to advocate for you, they're perceiving you at interview 0 based on the impression that you've given them. So how are you crafting that message? Is it one of unpreparedness? Is it one of you don't understand what's going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Highly possible. But the other thing that I would say is, if you're doing all of this, you're setting yourself up to win in interview number 1. Your other strategy going into interview number 1 should be researching the absolute heck out of the company. You should be on their social media pages. You should be on their company career page. You should be on their company portal. You should even be looking up like ex-employees to find out like why did they leave? Was it a shit show? Oh, was it a bad experience? Was it something? But regardless, you should be thinking about that. But, and this is what kind of goes into this, people often ask, what questions do I ask in an interview? If I'm going to be dedicating roughly 40 plus hours a week, which is roughly 2,000 plus hours a year, which is 25 roughly % of my life, not including sleep, 25% of my life is gone and dedicated to this place. Do you not think I want to ask questions to know if this is going to be a good place for me to dedicate the next 2,000, 4,000, or 6,000 hours of my life?
Yep.
Should I not vet them? And if you're doing the research, of course, questions will naturally come. But the other thing is, my goal, when you walk in an interview naturally is set up to be an interrogation, meaning they ask questions, you give answers. My goal is to break that system as early as humanly possible to make it go from interrogation to two equals and human beings having a conversation. I want questions back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like, they need to qualify themselves the way that I'm qualifying myself to them, but also I want to know more. I want them to know that I'm a peer. I want them to understand that I'm confident in my skill set. Very early on, I'm breaking that. So normally by the time that they ask the normal question that they ask at the end of the interview, like, Danny, do you have any questions for me? My normal response usually is, honestly, I've asked so many questions in this interview already. I don't really know what I could ask besides what we've already discussed. But I will ask, pop, 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 pop. Try to end it on one last note of whatever it is that I'm saving up for. And to be honest, you should be trying to find as many angles as possible to relate yourself into the company and the role that you're going for, while it being authentic. Like I've established many times before, I'm very big on volunteering. I still volunteer to this day. Even these communities are a way to volunteer as well. But for me, if I see a company that's like giving back and volunteering in some way, shape, or form, I personally identify with that. I love that. That was one of my favorite things at AutoZone, by the way, because they had a whole volunteer thing where if you could take up to, I think it was 2 days a year, if I remember correctly, 2 days a year that they would match your pay as a donation to that charity as well. So you don't have to actually take off and use PTO. You are paid to work there. They match your pay as a donation, just as a way to give back. That was one of the first things that I brought up. Can you explain this? Like, I saw this, but I didn't know if it was real. Like, is it only select employees? Now the interviewer's like, the recruiter's like, oh, I actually did this. I did it for Habitat for Humanity. And not only did I give back because they helped me get a home a long time ago, but now I was able to make sure that my employer gave back. Created this whole conversation. But you know what, though? Just being honest between us, that made me fall in love with AutoZone.
Yeah.
I loved hearing that. Then you know what was the other thing that I heard about them? And you know how I heard it? From an ex-employee. Danny, just as a thing to know, if you do get this job, you have to work in a store for a period of time. I said, what? What are you talking about? I'm a software developer. It's like, Danny, it doesn't matter what position in the organization you are. Everyone must work in the store for a period of time. I asked them about that, but do you know what? That made me fall in love with AutoZone even more.
Yeah.
And then I recorded a viral short in the store when I was working in there. It was this stupid thing that nobody in the store understood, but you could still find it because I thought I was gonna lose my job because of it. But I'd been working at AutoZone for like a week, and I started working in the store. And I had to work there like 3 days, I think it was. Open to close, that whole thing. You're working open to close.
Yeah.
No, sorry, not open to close. You're working 9 to 5, same hours as like a company, 9 to 5. But I stayed until close. But regardless, they had I ran up, and it was a bottle of bug remover. And so the whole 6-second short was me running up, grabbing the bottle, like, finally I have the solution, and running away. I thought it was dumb, foolish. I thought it was hilarious. And other people definitely thought it was hilarious because not only did it go viral, it went viral to the point where internal people at AutoZone saw it. And I started getting a phone call, and I was like freaking out. But that question let me know a lot about the company. This went from they're asking me and I'm answering to we're both having a conversation.
Yeah, I think that whenever students or people tell me like, hey, how do I know if the interview went well? My response is always, did it feel like a conversation? If it felt like a conversation, the interview probably went pretty well. And so use that as your litmus test. And so, all right, if folks are going into behaviorals, we've talked about quite a few things, right? Having a good tell me about yourself, which is like crafting a good story. That story should be something that ties your past into your present. Why are you showing up in front of them? And why do I want to talk to you? Like, what about you is exciting? What about you is going to make you a good fit for this role? Like, your chance to kind of set that tone. If you're getting through that kind of first initial conversation, you're going into a behavioral round. Behavioral questions are very common. You can use something like the bank that we use at 100 Devs, but you should practice these questions. It's not something your first shot at answering these questions should not be in the interview. You've wasted an interview if your first time answering these questions is in an interview. I like people to take the most common interview questions that you can find, record yourself, either in front of a mirror, in front of your phone, record yourself talking through them. Pay attention to how you have the conversation. Are you umming and ahhing every sentence? Does it make sense? Do you have a pattern you're following for these questions? I like CAR, cause, action, result. People use STAR, something. That way you have some answers memorized. They're deep in the back of your brain. That way when you're in an interview, it seems natural. People that seem natural in interviews are either they're 1 out of a million that can do it off the dome, which is very, very rare, or they're prepared. And they prepared enough to where it seems cool, calm, collected. They have good responses to the question that they're asking, but that was all because of the preparation that they did, right? And so you want to make sure that you're prepared for these types of conversations. So that's kind of behavioral. Are there any other tips you could think of for folks that are kind of thinking about preparing for the behavioral aspect?
Yeah. One of the biggest tip I can say, and this is just after years of learning, is the interview should not end without you having some kind of indication where if things went well, what are the next steps?
Yeah.
So I generally often ask, I felt like this is a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to like the next levels of the interview process. What does that process look like, and what can I do from my end to help keep the ball rolling in the right direction? I often use the ball rolling in the right direction as like a callback, because after a couple of days, and it's going to happen, right? Like maybe some interviews, like interview went well, you felt like you did everything right, but maybe they haven't responded to you yet. Maybe they have a lot of candidates going, whatever it may be. But I'll generally follow up after like a week and be like, hey, just want to find out what I need to do on my end to keep this ball rolling in the right direction. Is there something that I need to do to keep this progressing forward? Using the same analogy again. Yeah. Generally speaking, that will give me an indication to whether the interview is still in my favor or not, right? There's a million variables why you could not progress forward, right? You could be the best candidate in the world and just the wind blew the wrong direction that day and it wasn't you, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world. It just means we need to progress to the next thing. But I would never interview at one place and then stop my search everywhere else. Like, if anything, that's when I'm gearing up even more, because I'm like, I've got something here now that I can leverage in other conversations, and I should probably be doing that.
Momentum is everything when you're going on the job hunt. And we were talking about this during the huddle earlier today. Like, the number one mistake people make on the job hunt is over investing in one opportunity. Just like, oh, I got an interview. Everything about my day changes. Everything goes into this one interview. I'm building the products for this interview. I'm studying the questions for this interview, and everything else just kind of stops so they can focus on this interview. That interview takes a full week for you to get into the interview. Then it's like a whole other week for the next round of interviews, and then you don't get the opportunity because they lost headcount. You have never any idea. No, it's 2 weeks that have been lost in your entire process that you should have been lining up other interviews. You have to be good at planning out your days so that you can keep that momentum going through the process and not overinvest in one opportunity, or else when that opportunity, which is most likely not going to happen because it's just a pure numbers game, right? That you have the next one to roll into. And then if it does go well, boom, like you're saying, you have the negotiating leverage that you want in the next opportunity. You can also, if you get an offer, tell the other opportunities, hey, I have an offer. Can we speed this process up so that I can evaluate, right? And so many things you can do if you're kind of managing that pace through it.
And it's weird. As you're saying this, I'm realizing how much of sales really relate to this.
Yeah.
I don't really know a ton about sales, but I'm learning a lot more now, because I had a conversation with an executive one day where he basically changed my whole perspective on it. I've always hated sales, but he basically said, if you are at an executive level of any organization, not knowing sales means you should vacate your position, because either you are missing out on opportunities for your company because you don't know how to sell, or you're costing your company opportunities because you're being sold to without realizing it. And that changed my whole mind. Yeah. But what you just said about like leveraging that opportunity made me realize there's a sales term that I heard recently, and it went in one ear out the other until right now. And it's called, I believe it's called greed. It may be called something else, but my mind is saying greed right now. And it's like, people want what other people have. And if you have an opportunity that you're leveraging, that could get a company to be like, whoa, someone's already vetted him, her, or them, and realized, wow, they're decent at what they're doing. What are we missing here? Let's probably pay attention to this a little bit.
Yeah. It goes back to the risk, right? Like one of the ways you can de-risk yourself is somebody's already paid you money to be an engineer, right?
True.
If somebody's already paid you to be an engineer for 2 years, you're less risky than somebody coming right out of a program or school, right? And if you're in the interview process and you have 2 offers on the table, well, holy crap, like you're saying, like what don't I see? Like how am I messing up if so many other people have already made that risk qualification for us, which is really, really important for you to understand as you're going through the process. Like it comes down a lot to vibes. How risky of a candidate are you? Like, and that can be other things too, like talking too big of a game, and then there's no way we keep this person, right? Like even if we do give them an offer, they wouldn't be happy here, right? There's so many things that can go into that calculation. There's one piece that you mentioned about kind of the end of the behavior. I'm trying to recall what it was. The
Keeping the ball rolling.
Keeping the ball rolling, yeah. So keeping the ball rolling, it's how you get through the next round, right? Like it's keeping that ball rolling and people telling you what to expect is how you don't go into the next stage without a clue. The earlier stage you can often find online, right? The first round you should be able to find. If it's a decent sized company, somebody's posted on Glassdoor, somebody's posted on GitHub. You can talk to the employees that you have connections with. You should know what you're walking into. The deeper you get into the interview process, the harder and harder it is to find what you're walking into. And so asking very simply, like, hey, what should I expect? What's the next round going to look like? That gives you just that little bit of knowledge to be prepared for that round. And people are going into all rounds prepared. If you're just showing up smiling, you just did yourself a disservice. So I love the keeping the ball rolling. How can I be prepared? Like the knowing what you're walking into is the game you are playing. Do not go into these interviews like an accident. Know what you're walking into. And then keeping the ball rolling is so important because people just get busy.
Yep.
I had one person in 100 devs who got the job after 7 months. It was 7 months in between them interviewing well and them coming back being like, hey, we lost headcount, all this stuff weird happened. We got the opportunity again. Are you still available? It was 7 months in between, right?
Crazy.
But the whole time, like I tell people, don't give up until they tell you to stop emailing, right? Like you're still saying, hey, checking in, hoping that things are going well. Like he just did not give up. And so that's when they had a headcount who was top of mind. The person that's been emailing every 2 months for the past year got the opportunity, right? And so keeping that ball rolling, people get busy. People hopefully aren't intentionally just like completely ghosting you, but keeping that ball rolling keeps you top of mind. Opportunities come, opportunities go. A lot of people that go into the interview process don't even get the job that they thought they were applying for, right? Like there are other things that can be the opportunity that you wind up getting. And if you kind of keep that momentum, it just opens up more success, like more chances for opportunity to come your way. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one extra thing that I just remembered is the time to talk about salary is interview 1 and final interview. It is not in the middle interviews. And reason why is I just remembered one of the conversations that I had in my Discord where somebody's like, oh, I just finished a technical interview. And at the end of it, I said, what is the salary for this role? They're like, I don't know. The devs don't know. Like if you're doing a technical interview, they have no clue. Only person that has any idea what you're going to be making for your role is going to be somebody in HR, right? So if you're interviewing with a manager, they might have a range, but they don't know specifics. HR runs that show. So if you're not talking to HR, that is not the time to bring that up. You should, and I'm saying this specifically because you need to act like you belong in these interviews. Asking questions like that kind of showcases how unknowing you are to the interview process. And I don't want to say it will raise a red flag, but it would definitely be like, oh, you haven't even thought about this?
Yeah.
Like just now it came?
Yeah. 1,000%. Also save all the dirty laundry until you have an offer, right? You saw that one negative thing on Glassdoor. Don't ask your interviewer day one, like, hey, I saw that Bob really disliked the org because XYZ happened, right? No, like we don't talk about that. Like that's it. This interview's done. Like go home. But once you have the offer, you can ask anything you want. Hey, I saw that review. Like this seems like an amazing opportunity. I want a clarification around this. Once you have the offer, it's a very different world than in mid-interview. That's a really important piece of advice for people to understand. So behavioral, we talked about, kind of phone screen, recruiter,
Yeah.
we talked about.
We should move on to like the next one, the technical.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, my technical advice has always been the same. Go in there prepared, right? There's a million ways that we could say this, but let's be real. Y'all know if it's a technical interview and they're doing leak code questions and you haven't studied leak code, for audio listeners, I'm staring at the camera right now like, what are you doing, right? Like, you know better than that. I would say prepare. I would rather be over-prepared and not need the leak code and all the other good stuff than be in a situation where I wish I had it and I'm not using it. That's one. Number two, think out loud. I've said this for years. The biggest part, I've literally bombed interviews, but because I thought through my process and talked through my process, they were like, he got the answer wrong. Could be nerves, could be anything, but he has the foundation of what it is that we're looking for here. He's explained everything that we were looking for on how he approached that process. Now, here's the other thing. If you know the answer, don't speed through the problem like in 15 seconds. I see it all the time, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? Because all they're going to do is like, oh, you knew that? Swap.
Oh.
Like, don't let the fact that you are prepared be the thing that ends up hurting you in that process. It should be the other way around.
Yeah. Technical interviews are still vibes, right? They're testing, can you do the job? And do I want to work with this person for the next 2 years? So that communication collaboration piece you're talking about is just as important as whether or not you get to the actual end result. And so when you're in a technical interview, for folks that are not watching, don't do this where you put like your face up against the whiteboard or up against the screen and you're just talking nonsense. Oh yeah, carry the 5, do the 1 to 15, blah, 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 carry the, like, and just completely lose the conversation with the person that you're interviewing with. But you still get to this, you get to the right solution. There's a good chance you're not going to the next round. You won the game of, can I solve it? But you lost, I can't work with this person for the next 2 years, right?
Yeah.
They have a vote. They're voting not higher, right? And so keep that in mind. The other thing too, is you're talking out loud, this is something you need to practice starting today. Every leak code you do, every coding challenge you do, you talk out loud. You now no longer code in silence. This is not something you are allowed to do if you listen to this podcast. You must now do your coding challenges by talking out loud, right? We follow a system called PREP, parameters, returns, example, pseudocode, where each problem we have the same kind of formula that we're walking through, but the most important bit is the saying it out loud, that communication. Record yourself if you want to. Do something so you can see how you come across while you're doing this, but do not stop talking out loud, because a lot of companies are encouraged to give you hints, right? So we, at Resilient Coders, we went to top tier FANG company. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If I said the name, their lead recruiter brought us in, showed us how the interview process goes, brought in the people that do the interviews at this FANG level company. And they said, all right, we do the interview. It's kind of expected to go in 2 phases. You do a brute force, and then you do the optimal solution. And when you do the optimal solution, if you get the brute force, every single one of our interviewers is encouraged to give you a hint, but only if you've been communicating. So if you get a brute force on the board and you've been communicating, they give you a hint to get to the more optimal solution. If you're not talking, you're not communicating, you're not collaborating, you're not getting that hint, which will help you get to the more optimal solution. So even top tier companies are incentivizing you to communicate, to collaborate, to talk out loud, to get the hint that you need to get to this solution is really, really important. And so if top tier companies are doing it, mid tier companies are doing it too, and everyone else in between.
So yeah, go through it, answer it. I mean, that's pretty straightforward there. Let's progress now into either it's going to be interview number 3 or interview number 4. Just really depends. But it's what I call the half behavioral, half technical, full vibe interview.
Yeah.
And that's either going to be with the engineering manager, the director, the CTO, et cetera, et cetera. This is them vetting you. Now, there may be an optional interview after this where it's the team vetting you, but it pretty much goes the same.
Dine interview.
Yeah. And so with this, the half technical, half behavioral, they're not going to give you like a HackerRank assessment or something like that generally. There may be some variables, but generally speaking, they're asking you verbal questions, engaging your responses. And so they're going to ask some like, team dynamic, this and that, and find out more about you, et cetera, et cetera. But because they've already vetted that you have the technical skill to a certain capacity. Now they're probably going to throw some questions at you. And I've been asked quite a few over the years, but there's one that has always stuck out to me. I've never forgotten this one. And it was for my first job at tech. And it was with the engineering director of the company. And it was a virtual interview, right? Because he was located in Colorado. This is pre-pandemic. So there was like no, like Zoom wasn't a household name. Google Meet wasn't a household name and none of that. And so I thought it was like, I was in the future doing a video meet like this, man. But I'm doing a video call and he asked me several questions. He even asked me like how to do like a sorting through a hash table kind of question. I can't remember the exact verbiage there, but I had just recently learned it. And I was so grateful. And I actually, someone who worked there, we weren't friends, but I met him via LinkedIn. He had told me that these are like in the realm of where we could potentially like have questions come from. And I just studied everything that I could in that area in Java. And I actually answered that question really well. But then he asked me, Danny, let's say that I am the owner of a company that has a video viewing platform like YouTube. And I'm like, you know what? I want to make a competitor to YouTube, like a full out competitor. And you are my chief architect. How would you do it? And I remember you're going to ask that question. I was like, there's so many areas where this could go. Like, and I started asking clarifying questions. And this is the only time in my career that someone has ever said, they said, don't ask the clarifying question. Just answer it. And I was like, what? And I remember up until this point, mind you, this is like 50 minutes in the interview, 5-0. The entire time he is smiling, he is happy, everything is going great. He asked me this, and within like 30 seconds of my answer, he starts looking mad. And in my mind, I'm freaking out because oh my God, I just threw away this whole opportunity over a damn question about YouTube. I can't believe this. Oh my God. And I'm answering it. And I remember he asked me something where I was like, would you go server first or would you go on-prem first? Would you go cloud first? And if so, like, what would be your strategy around that? And I'm like, man, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm just talking through what I know. And my approach was I'm going user first. Like, why wouldn't, for a platform like YouTube, where the goal is to retain them on the platform longer than ever, my goal would be to make this as great of a user experience as possible. And I didn't even know if that was the right answer. But I was like, it just makes logical sense to me here that I'd want them to stay on the website longer. So everything else comes secondary besides what the user is going to see. So I'd be working on every kind of user design aspect. I'd be working on how like performant the videos are showing and things like that. I would make it easy for them to upload. Like that process should be a one-step process, not a multiple-step process, et cetera, et cetera. He's mad. And I'm like, oh, I just blew this whole interview over a damn question about YouTube. And I asked him, like, so, like, what are, I want to keep the ball rolling, right? Like, and the ball rolling. And he's like, yeah, if we want you, you'll hear from us. I was like, this done. Done. Terrible. And I get a call. And I remember in that call, it was like an hour later. The recruiter's like, oh, he loved you. I was like, oh, really? Like, I did not get that vibe, but that is fantastic. Like, I'm so happy. And by pure instinct, which I regretted in the moment, literally as the words left my mouth, they made an offer and they told me the salary range, and I instantly said, oh, can we go higher? And in the same moment, I was like, why did I say that? This is so dumb, and la da 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 da. And I'm freaking out now. But it's because I was so used to like the vendors from the gas station. They would always say, here's a chicken order. I'm like, oh, can you give us a better price? You just ask. And so just instinctively, I did that. And I guess that was good. But I ended up getting, I asked for an extra $5,000. So and I'll be very transparent. They offered me 60. I said, can you give me 65? And they said, let me see. And so, 2 days went by. I got a call back, and I was regretting it the whole time. So freaking out. But 2 days went by. They called back. They said, Danny, unfortunately, we have to reject your 65. And I was like, I get it, and before I could say anything else, they're like, yeah, because we're going to beat it and we're going to go to 70. And I was like, do I need to drive there to sign this thing? Do you want to email it to me? Like, you tell me what to do and it's done. But it showed me that whole process of the soft technical to how that next part of that thing goes. But here's the thing that I really harp on. A lot of juniors, when they're getting in the first job, and I fell victim to this, they want to negotiate. Negotiating is fine. But look at how big of a variable that negotiation was. It was 10 grand, which to me at that time was life-changing money. For somebody, it would be life-changing money, right? But the reality is, what if that 10 grand cost me that opportunity? Would I be okay with that? I don't know. But what was my income? Not one roll, but 2 rolls later.
Yeah.
Almost 5x that.
Yep.
Am I really going to be so fixated on 10 grand to cost me 4 or 5xing that? Now, of course, there's a lot of variables in that. You can't necessarily always take that. But it's like I always say, the income of your first job will never, ever match the income of your third, right? This field will always pay for experience and knowing what to do. So don't put yourself in a position where you're like costing yourself opportunities for 5 grand or 3 grand or something like that. Think bigger picture and longer term here.
Kind of going full circle, that the reason why I do what I do is because I see the high growth career potential, right? There's not many of those out there that is super high growth where each year you could double. And so if you can get someone in that door, 3, 5, 6 years down the line, their income potential is so vast. And there's actually a lot of really interesting data around your first salary actually kind of dictates your like future earning, except in high growth fields. And so in a high growth field, it's completely different. And so it's really interesting to see so many people shoot themselves in the foot because they're so worried about hitting that 6-figure mark on that first roll that when somebody comes with 85, 90K, they're balking because they've been sold some weird dream from TikTok. That it's absurd, because if you just did it for a year, you could be hitting the multiples that you're talking about. And so I just want to shake people that have that in their brain. That's like, it's not your first salary that matters in tech. It matters because you got to put food on the table. But if you put in the work, it can double, triple so quickly. And we know it because we've seen so many students. We've seen students that were just on the previous episodes that have done it, where they started with the same numbers you were talking about and have doubled and hit 6 figures within a year or two. Like, it happens over and over and over and over again. We've seen it over and over and over again. And so you should be optimizing for getting that first role, getting that experience. You can optimize for the numbers as you get deeper into your career, for sure.
100%. And the thing I want to like even preface this with is there's a lot of variables that go into that, right? Like, one person may be blessed where maybe you don't have those blessings to a certain degree, right? If you want to bring like a philosophy or religion into this. So I wouldn't hold that against yourself, and I wouldn't hold yourself to that metric. What I have always gone back and said is, what are you making in relation to the area that you're living in? And if that number and that is fantastic for that area, then you're doing great, man. If that number is bad, then you're doing bad, man. Like, that's how I gauge my negotiation tactics. Like, the salary in Memphis, Tennessee is not going to match the salary in San Francisco. There's just no possible way. Now, every time I say this on Twitter, someone's like, well, if I do the job the same way, I should get paid. It's like, stop, okay? It's not going to, in an ideal dream world, yes, I agree with you. In America, in the United States, in the world, it's not going to happen that way. Yeah. They go off of cost of living based on that, simple as that. And so, regardless, you should be prepared for that. So, I mean, regardless of wherever you find yourself in that argument. But if I'm in Memphis and I'm making 100 grand, I know I'm living great. Right, in Memphis, that's like you're in the top 1% of 100 grand. So 100 grand, I'm life feels good at that point. But if I'm in San Francisco, 100 grand, I'm struggling. Stuff is tough out here. I can tell you right now, I just came back from San Francisco last week. Prices out of this world crazy, right? So if somebody offered me 100 grand out there, but we got to talk. We got to have a conversation. There's no way. But in Memphis, you're doing all right.
Yeah, I think something got twisted for a lot of kind of early career folks around like what expectations around salary should be. And this conversation is by no means that you should not be like trying to get the bag, right? Like that you should not be going for what you want to be going for. There's just been like a weird twist around like what a good salary is. And I love what you're mentioning is like, look at the context of the area in which you live, right? Look at the context of what a graduate could be making from a top tier university a year to 10 years out. And so the wild thing is that like when you look, you're dusting those numbers. Like local median average salary, you're often coming out the gate higher for your first role in tech. 2 years out, you're double, triple what the median is, right? You look at top tier university graduates, you're probably making more in engineering right out the gate. And for some reason, we just don't see it as like worthwhile or impactful for a lot of folks. And I just really want to shake that out of you. Like it's you got to do that comparison. You got to see where you're at. Don't let like that weird vision of it has to be 6 figures, 120, or else it's not worth my time. Like get your bag, sure. But like, what is the median? Like, what is the alternative for you in your area? What's the median in your area? What is the best university in that area graduating folks into? Right? Because you'll often be surprised, and it might put some realistic expectations around that price point for you. Yeah. It's just something weird that I see happen over and over again. And we get a chance to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah. To be honest, it's like every time we do this episode, I feel like there's 15 different areas that we can go into.
Yeah.
But regardless. Okay. Let's do, I feel like we've answered this already. So, I feel like we've done justice to the topic today. Yeah. Let's do Ask Danny and Leon. Everybody's favorite segment. It is Ask Danny and Leon question. And so this question came in. It's a long one. I haven't read it all, so we're going to read it in real time.
Nice.
But let's read this. So, hey, can't thank y'all enough for taking the time to share your knowledge. Absolutely loving the podcast so far. Still a few episodes behind, but I've been able to take something away from every listen. Thank you. Coming into this year, I had a realization. Let me zoom into this. I had a realization that I've never felt disengaged in any learning process in my life. It's definitely been challenging and frustrating, but high motivation has been beneficial in so many ways. There was something said in an earlier episode about figuring out the why, setting a goal, and optimizing for that. It's been a daily practice, but I struggle whenever I try to think through this problem. I believe there's value and social impact in reducing the friction for students and faculty advisors to help drive the process of finding wherever this fits. I'm wondering if the most efficient way to develop the technical skills for building out a solution is to hone in on the job hunt freelancing to get professional experience, go trial by fire, and just dive in, or some kind of combination. I don't think the paths branch off much at this stage, so I try to work in the overlap as much as possible due to limited time. But every now and then, why do you have limited time? But every now and then that the overwhelming feeling creeps in. And when I reflect, it's usually my health habits that slip from pushing too hard, okay? There was an analogy about doors in 100 Devs that really stuck. So he's also in 100 Devs. That really stuck with me. So I am not closed off to any path, but I don't know what I don't know and always question if there's a better approach in the moments. Any insight would be appreciated. This question is all over the place. Thanks again for everything you guys do. I will definitely thank you both in person one day. Y'all help me see the light at the end of the tunnel that are struggling mentally. Okay, it's already changed my life so much that I'm very grateful for that. If you're spiritual, God bless you both. And if not, sending love, health, and positive energy to y'all. There's a lot in this one question.
Yeah. I like that you picked this.
I was questioning if I liked it or not.
No, I like it because I think it's because there's a lot of like
layers.
I don't want to say fears, but there's a lot of worry that comes up when you're going throughout this journey. And I think this question has a lot of those worries. So like the first one I heard was like trying to figure out your why so you can go on the journey to get to where you want to go. Super critical. If you don't have a strong why, there's no way you're going to study all the things we just told you to study in this episode, to put in the effort. Like if you don't know why you're doing this, you're just not going to make it to the end. So I'm glad that you figured out your why. But when you go on the journey to figure out your why, you might often find a passion, right? And so you mentioned this like other thing that you want to be doing that could be something that more in lines with your total life goals. What a overwhelming privilege it is for people that get that overlap of like their employment and what they absolutely passionately want to do. I'm a big fan of getting into tech so that your life stabilizes to the point to where you can do the things that you want to do. Right? Like I make enough money through my freelancing and my job and the things that I do that I can give so much time freely at 100 devs. If I didn't have my freelancing, my wife would not let me. Like it just would not, like that time would not be my own to spend as I want, right? And so for me, it's kind of like you put your mask on before you help others, but it can also apply to the things that you want to do in life. When you have a stable career that's putting money in the bank and food on the table, it opens up your time to be able to invest in these other areas. And then the cool thing about tech is you can often find an overlap if you have the skills. And so my advice is great. You have your why, get to your life being stable through the opportunities that tech provides, and then slowly transition into something that might be more in line with your ultimate goal in life. So that's kind of the first thing that I heard.
There was the other one about to develop skills, thing about honing it on the job with hunting / freelancing to get professional experience. Go trial by fire.
Yeah. You have to do, I'm a big fan of doing everything. Like when I tell people like, there's a couple of big things you want on the job search. I ideally want you to have gotten a paid freelancing client, 100 hours project, like a project you sunk 100 hours into. You've prepared your bank. So like you have your behavioral questions locked in, you have your technical questions locked in, and you've done some technical prep plus networking your way into. Like all that stuff that's a full-time job for a lot of folks, or hours outside of their full-time job to get all this stuff done. You just can't go into your days like an accident. And there are going to be periods where you can't do everything. So you have to take stock in the time and energy that you have. And then how do you get the most out of it? Gary Vee gets a lot of shit. I don't think he should get as much shit as he gets. I really like some of the things that he said in the past. And one of my favorite things he's always said is, tell me what you do between 7 and 2 and I'll tell you how successful you are. Right? Like not everyone gets the same amount of hours. But what are you doing with the hours that you do have? And are you squeezing all the juice out of them? And are you doing it in a way that's sustainable for you and your family and for your loved ones, right? Like, are you doing it in a way that is repeatable for the long haul? Not a 2-week sprint, but a 2-year sprint to get the skills, the things you need to get to where you want to go. And a lot of people don't set up their life that way. They don't have the hard conversation with their loved one. They don't have the hard conversation with their boss about needing to have a more regular schedule. Like you got to set up your life so you can take the swing to open all the doors that you talked about so opportunity can come through, and you build up to it. Don't come out the gate and do everything we've asked you to do this episode. You're just not going to be able to do it. You got to build up to it. How can I incorporate a half an hour each day? Once I've been stable for that half an hour doing my behavioral questions, can I then bump it up to an hour and add some technical preparation too? Then can I bump it up to 2 hours? Like you want to give yourself grace and the ability to acclimatize and to get up to that speed. But once you do, and you've got everyone around you bought in, or maybe they aren't bought in, screw them anyway. You've set up yourself to be able to go after what you want to go after. A lot can change.
There's a lot to touch on this. I feel like you've touched on a lot, but I still feel there's a lot that still isn't even touched, just because there's so many layers here. And my mind is really thinking through not just the question that is being asked, but I'm also thinking through what the mindset was when you developed the question. What were you feeling? And so, number one, I don't know, because that context isn't here, I don't know where you are in the journey. I don't know if you've been doing this for 1.5 years and you feel confident in programming skills. I don't know if you've been doing it for 3 months, right? Generally speaking, and I'm not saying this applies to you because I don't know. Generally speaking, though, there is a point that I've noticed in majority of people learning to code that they hit a wall, a roadblock. And that wall is so strong for them that that's the point where they start questioning if they're going to do this or not. That generally happens when they transition from HTML, CSS into JavaScript, because that is the first time that they're like, oh, I wanted to make a background red. I told it to go red. It went red. This makes sense. Now you're saying, oh, I need to get 10 values. I need to put those values in an array for some reason. I need to sort this array. And now you're saying based on that sorting of the array, I got to filter some things out. Like, what are we talking about? This is a whole new way to solve problems. And because of that, people often at the stage question, and I often to this day still get asked, can I get a job with only HTML, CSS? I get that a lot. And the answer to that question, to be honest with you, is maybe. Anything is possible in this world. Will you be a good candidate for majority of roles? No, because you don't have the demand for the market. I'm allergic to that question. But when you put yourself in a position where you know the demand of the market and you can fill it, you're in a better position. Now, when you say, I believe there's value in social impact and reducing the friction for students and faculty and advisors to help drive the process of finding whatever that fit is, especially environments where awareness is low or information is not easily accessible. That's kind of why we do this. That's the whole purpose. It's to help people understand what their why is, help them identify potential paths and situations, give insight, especially because a lot of this insight is never really shared publicly. Like, this is stuff people go through. They don't think about how to explain it. They just don't talk about it. So that's kind of the reason why we do this. In regards to your why, I do think having a why is probably one of the best things that you could ever do. But I believe I said this in an earlier episode. Not just identifying your why is important. I'm a very big believer in anything meaningful, especially goals, should be physically written down and placed on your wall. So in between this camera and these monitors is a wall. And on that wall right now, there's roughly 20 plus index cards on there. Each index card has a goal on there. Some of them are very small. Some of them are easily attainable. And some are so massive, it would scare the average human being. Those are the ones that really get me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, those are the ones that, like, I lose sleep over because I'm excited to work on them, right? Your goal, I'm not saying you need to necessarily be addicted to that goal to a certain degree. But when I face my goal every day, I have very serious conversations with myself. Like, this is a matter of fact, Sunday, I was like, I'm just going to binge TV today. There's nothing wrong with that. Some days, like, you earn that, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm like loading up the Netflix shows and this and that, I kind of looked and I was like, do I really want to spend 10 hours binging TV? What if I just spend 7? 7 hours is a lot. But now I got 3 hours that I can actually do something like a little productive with. Nothing wrong with that. That's up to you. But my goals are so exciting to me that I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. And so, like, right now as we speak, I'm building out an MCP server in AI for a Spanish language learning application. Mainly because I was using Duolingo for a long time. After 100 days, no hate to Duolingo, I just don't feel like I've learned anything. Like, I have some vocabulary words. I could still cuss people out in Spanish the way that I did before, but I really don't feel like I know much else at all.
Yeah.
And it just means that their learning style wasn't a fit for me. Nothing wrong with that. I did like the gamification or the aspect of, like, I'm sticking to something every single day, but it just didn't pay off in the end. Like, I'm very big on auditing my time, right? And so for some, that 10 minutes a day that they spend in Duolingo is great. For me, if I'm spending 10, 20, 30 minutes a day in a thing, and to be honest, I was dedicating probably more time than most people do to that thing because I was very serious about wanting to learn something. And after 100 days, 3 months and 10 days, essentially, I don't feel like I retained much at all. So I was like, I need to come up with another solution. So I got all these other programs and this and that. Some of that, I even got a big book. I'll even put it right here. Big book that I've been studying on my own, right? And I was like, well, what if I just made my own thing? And I was like, and I started experimenting with talking back and forth with AI. I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like, this works a little bit. But I still like having like a human feedback loop. So I was like, this is not going to be the end all be all, but it could be a situation of maybe I make something fun on the side because I want to build something anyway. So this is like a fun way to do that. And so that's kind of what I've been doing, right? And it's very intimidating. It's a lot to go through. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to prioritize and like keep digging deep into because it's all new stuff hitting the market, right?
Yeah.
But that gets me excited, and it's a personal goal for me, and it kind of wakes me up before work to study and learn and build. And I'm not saying that you need to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna stop the hate tweets right there because I know they're gonna come. But my focus has always been there should be a time of day that you prioritize yourself every single day. And so that's kind of what you need to think about. Now, in regards to like working, I don't see nothing wrong with that. The one thing that I will say though is if you commit to something and someone pays you for that thing, you're not just being paid to do a job. You have a commitment here. Someone is, because they're not your employer, right? You've sold somebody on something that can solve a problem. It is now your responsibility, in my opinion, to deliver the thing that you promised. Because if you don't, you are now putting them in a position where they're worse off than before they even spoke to you. So it's not that you just didn't deliver on a thing. You got their hopes up on something that could potentially change their business, change their life, X, Y, Z. They gave you money for it, all this and that, and you let them down. Don't do that. So if you're at a stage where you just learned HTML, CSS, maybe study a little bit more so that way you can deliver a full-rounded solution. Don't just also, in my opinion, don't just code something for the sake of coding something if it is not the solution that fits the problem. Because after you deliver that solution, you're walking away. How are they going to maintain it? For some businesses, serving them a WordPress Wix site is the actual solution that they require. There's nothing wrong with that. Some businesses, they need straight up code as a solution. That's the solution that they require. Solve the right problem with the right tool instead of ego driving your solution to be like, I need something written in Java so I can show these employers that I got Java experience. So I'm gonna leave them with a Java project. You give it to them, they pay you $1,000, whatever it may be. They gave you all this money, and they're like, I don't know what this does. You want me to do? I don't want to know what deployment is. Oh, there's a bug in the site. You expect me to fix it? I don't know how to do that. Deliver the right solution. And I guarantee you that's going to be better off. And you'll learn a lot doing that solution. I remember the first website I ever sold in my life was to a Mexican restaurant right around the corner from my house. You never know where one conversation would take you. But you know what? That solution was the right one for them. You know why? Because they used me 2 more times, 3 times in total in the entire time that I lived in Memphis for their work. So each time from one conversation, I got paid 3 times. That's fantastic. Like that referral. But you know what else? They recommended me my second website ever, which was a CBD shop. And so like I was able to make a website for a CBD shop because they recommended me to the CBD shop. But it's because I delivered on what I promised them. So don't promise the sun, moon, and stars and give them dirt. Be very aligned with what you can deliver, and I guarantee you'll be great. As far as motivation goes, I'll be honest. Motivation, that's cool to have it, but the reality is it'll never stick around forever. Like there are times where people want to lose weight, and then after a while, that feeling goes away because chocolate cake just tastes so good, right? The reality is, if you only allow motivation to guide you, you'll probably only work 10 days out of 365. There has to be a moment where you just take it seriously and you're like, you know what? I don't really feel like doing this thing today, but I'm going to go do it because it's supposed to be done, because it's a responsibility within my life, because I've made this a priority. If you do that, you'll be in a very good situation. It's been real. It's been fun. And we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.